Hello, everyone. It's Nickolas, Wildstar candidate for California governor. Hope you can see me and hear me, right? I got a thumbs up. Okay, great. I am here with another community Q&A. I don't know why my modem just went down at home, so I'm not running the studio from my desktop computer as I usually would, and I'm working on my laptop. So if I look a bit pixelated or if there happens to be any technical issues, don't blame me. Blame Big Brother, okay? Speaking of Big Brother and the problems that they, have in our lives, I have a few friends here with me to talk about that for this community Q&A session. So I got my friend Daryl Cotton here, who is going to introduce us to Mr. Charles Lynch. So, fellas, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thank you, Nickolas. Thanks for having us back on again today. It's starting to get to be a regular thing, you and I. So we really appreciate everything you're doing for us as the cannabis community goes, but more importantly, as liberty and our civil rights go. Cannabis is just, one element of what we're able to point to and say, we've been taken advantage of, we've been violated. And unless we do something about it and we put the right people in office, nothing's going to change. So, Nickolas, you are that change. And it's with that, I would like to introduce you to somebody that I really respect. He's had a long and storied battle with cannabis law. And the problem that he's faced is that, the state and local laws will say one thing that allow him as a business person to invest and get going a medical cannabis dispensary back in 2006. But here we are in 2021. And Mr. Charles Lynch, I do respect and admire you, Charles, is still laboring under the burden that is federal law and the differences between them. So, Charles, welcome to the show. Nice to have you.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
And what part of the world are you in now, Charles?
What part of the world, physically or mentally?
Yeah, where are you living now? You're no longer in California, right?
No, actually, I left California and I live in Farmington, New Mexico now, kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
And how's life treating you today? I mean, I know there's still a lot of stress. This case still is ongoing. Am I right?
Yeah, case drags on. Yep.
Okay. And it's got to make it hard to make real long-term plans based on that. But knowing what you know now, would you have invested in cannabis back in the mid-2000s?
Well, if I knew if I was going to be under federal prosecution for 25% of my life or 5,204 days, I doubt if I would have made that move,
It didn't seem like even a remote possibility, though, did it? When you invested in a license to be a licensed dispensary in Morro Bay, right?
What do you mean?
You invested in a license and you started a dispensary. You spent the money. You were totally compliant at the state and local level. But now what you know is that the conflict that exists between federal and state law and even your local government law created a real problem for you, didn't it?
Yeah, actually that problem is Schedule 1, Schedule 1 under federal law, the Controlled Substances Act. In fact, THC is still Schedule 1 today. And so anybody who's doing anything basically in the marijuana industry is operating illegal under federal law.
Did you know that then? Did you know that then when you got your license for the dispensary?
Well, actually, I knew that marijuana was against federal law, and I called the DEA before I opened. And so that was part of my defense in my trial, was that I called the DEA and they told me it was up to the cities and counties to decide. And I had an entrapment by estoppel defense, but it wasn't enough to stop them from convicting me. I didn't get to use the Constitution as a defense. The California law was based on the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, and Breach versus Gonzalez determined that the Constitution doesn't apply when THC is involved, which is the big problem, I think.
It's ridiculous.
Were you able to make a 10th Amendment argument as an individual, or is that only afforded the states?
Well, no, actually, nobody could make the argument, I don't think.
No.
So, quick question. If you could, Charles, just give us a brief description of what exactly happened to you in your case. Because I don't think too many people out there may be familiar with it. So if you could kind of,
and it got a
give
lot
a
of
rundown.
attention. He was on Larry King. He's got a lot of attention, but 14 years later, what happened back in 2000 when this all started, Charles?
Right.
Well, I opened the dispensary, and I ran it for a year without any problems, and then they raided us on March 31st, 2007, I think.
What agency was that?
The DEA, along with the local sheriff's department.
But I thought you were in compliance with the state and local government. Was that not the case?
Yeah, but they were there with them, though.
Do you think the DEA is the lead agency on this, and then they brought in the sheriffs as support?
No, the sheriff started it. The sheriff didn't like it. He was rounding up people with his. He sent out paddy wagons to round up medical marijuana patients, that were growing medical. And so Sheriff Pat Hedges, he's an enemy of the Constitution, and he violated his oath to uphold state law, and instead turned to the feds to push his political agenda against me personally, and also against all medical marijuana people in his county there. And so anyway, they raided the place, and then they didn't arrest me that day. But what they also did is they created a fake conspiracy. One of my employees. And so what happened there is, I had about 10 employees or so, and I was paying them, regular paychecks, taxed and all that through a payroll system.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, one of my employees, Abe Baxter, he rest in peace at this point, he died a couple years ago. But anyway, he went out on the streets and he sold a pound of weed. And he was selling diesel, I think. I forget the name. But anyway, he sold a pound of diesel to undercover sheriff's deputies. And then because he worked for me, they said that I sent him down there to do that, which I did not do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my 5-year conspiracy conviction, is that I sent my employee to sell a pound on the street. And if you look at the pictures up on my website, you'll see that the weed that he sold on the street is completely different from what I had. The diesel I had looked like real decent, high grade cannabis, where he was selling like, low grade Mexican buttweed basically to the sheriff's deputies. But anyway, so they used that against me, and they also convicted me of distributing to minors. Under California state law, there's no age limit on medical marijuana. The feds, they had video of me giving one of my employees a birthday gift of a gram or 2, maybe 3. I gave him a birthday gift, and so they used that against me, and convicted me of distributing to minors. And so under federal law, anybody in a drug case under 21 is considered a minor. The minor I was convicted of, he was 19 years old at the time. He had a valid medical marijuana card. And also, the one thing the prosecutors did in that case is they didn't even ask for his consent or nothing to use his image and all that stuff. I talked to him years later after I got convicted. He says he didn't even know that they were using his image and stuff. So they basically exploited a minor in order to get my conviction of distributing to minors.
Do you see the problems Charles has, though, Nick? I mean, because the federal government is inconsistent with state law, there's this indiscriminate and subjective amount of enforcement that they'll apply, and then they'll even create a conspiracy against Charles so they can get the conviction. He was in a no-win situation 14 years ago, but here we are today. What ended up happening? Did you go to trial, Charles?
Yeah, actually, they offered me a 1-year deal, but I says, hey, what about the Constitution? This is a constitutional right. I shouldn't have to be taking no 1-year deal. But anyway, I didn't take the deal, and then they upped the charges. It would have been just operating a drug premises, would have been my 1-year deal charge. And but I fought it out, and ended up, they threw on 5 more counts, They upped the ante since I didn't take the deal.
Did you get a jury trial?
I went to jury trial, and even the jury was confused about the Constitution part. They're saying, isn't the Constitution, doesn't that rule everything? And they're saying, well, this other case, Rage versus Gonzalez, and then they wouldn't even talk about it. And they redacted things and told them, you can't think of that, when they're doing their final decisions and stuff. But it was a witch hunt. If you want a real witch hunt, watch the Charles USA versus Lynch trial.
And what year was that trial?
I don't know, 2008, maybe somewhere.
So
it was a couple
many
years
counts
after.
were you convicted of?
Five counts.
Oh my God.
And now that was in 2008. So here we are in 2021.
Well, let me talk about a couple. So I got 2 of the counts out there. So the distributing of minors, and then the conspiracy, the fake conspiracy they created against me. The conspiracy charge has a 5-year mandatory minimum. The distributing to minors has a 1-year no mandatory minimum basically attached to that too. So the other charges were cultivating. I had a nursery permit from the city of Morro Bay to provide small plants to patients. And so I had a nursery permit, and they actually what they did is they took all the plants that I provided to the patients and added them up. So that was 3,000 plants, right? And under federal law, if you have more than 100 plants, I think that's the 5-year mandatory minimum mark. And if you have 1,000 plants, that's the 10-year mandatory minimum mark. So anyway, they were really nice to me, and they only hit me with 100 plants. Yeah, even though I had 3,000 that they went back through the books and added them all up. And so they charged me with distributing or growing basically that I had 99 plants on the premises, and so that's counts 2, 3 of the counts, and then the 4 and 5. Yeah, I'd have to look, but one of them is just basically distribution of marijuana. Maybe operating a drug premises. I'd have to look at the other 2 counts. I can't remember right now.
But the jury was persuaded to find you guilty on those 5 counts.
Yeah, actually, if you listen to what the lead juror said, she says, "Well, Mr. Lynch wasn't following federal law."
No shit.
All right.
Well, but were you following state law?
I was doing my best to follow the rules. I was trying to set a great example for the community, the marijuana community, the medical marijuana community, everybody, And I did my best, and I did a lot of work there to get the business up and running. And I did a lot of the work myself that most people probably would have hired out, But,
so let's revisit that. Medical cannabis back in 2007, 6, 7, you would have required a physician's recommendation for every transaction. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. And
if it was a minor and the physician had prescribed cannabis, you would fill that order, wouldn't you?
Well, actually, I had a rule from the city of Morro Bay that said anybody 18 or older could enter the dispensary, but anybody 18 or younger had to have a parent with them.
And was that the case?
Right.
Always?
Right. And so, I even had Drew Carey did my story on one of our minor patients who his parents actually came in with him, and but they didn't prosecute me on him. They prosecuted me on the other guy, So.
Hi, Heidi Grossman. Hi,
the
Heidi.
Most upsetting, yes, hello, Heidi. The most upsetting thing, one of the many things that upsets me about your case is the guilt by association part. Like you said, one of the charges against you was basically you providing a gift to what they call as a minor, which according to California law is an adult by being, number 1, 18, then number 2, being a medicinal marijuana patient at the age of 19. So that's awful that happens with medicinal marijuana or the cannabis industry in general, while they apply that same guilt by association to if maybe someone commits a robbery or something like that and is in possession of a weapon, now they apply those same charges, or if it leads to a murder or something, they'll charge somebody else that may have been with them, or even go to track back the weapon seller to see if they can try to prosecute them. And it's awful that they try to persecute people that may have nothing to do with a crime being committed. or
was a
not,
witch hunt.
not the guy that you gave the gift to, but the one that went out there selling it on the street,
Right. Yeah,
But
he ended up taking a state. They prosecuted him under state level, and then during my trial, he pled the fifth. And
but you did say something very interesting. So the jury said in their closing statements that you had violated federal law. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's
so
what you said. Yeah.
They found you guilty based on your violations of federal law. Well, no shit. We know that because there's a disconnect. We're incompatible. There is indeed positive conflict between state law and federal law. The state gets to assert a 10th Amendment right. Nick is there to fight for our liberties as patients, because at the time there's no such thing as for-profit recreational cannabis. So you're running the prototypical medical cannabis dispensary that's doing everything based on what state law required of the time. So indeed, you had federal law violations, but indeed, we have those same violations today. So this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you did everything by the book.
Well, if the people today believe that they are immune from federal prosecution because it's too hypothetical, the Fed's not going to go after you. I'm here to tell you, we got a guy in our middle screen right here. They've been after him for 14 years.
Yep.
And it's been a witch hunt, hasn't it?
Yep. It's been hasn't been that much fun, that's for sure.
So what's next?
And
I understand you have Macintosh hearings. Can you tell us a little bit about what's the last breaths of this case mean for you?
Well, let me say one thing on that minor. The minor, I think they charged me with the minor thing to try to just make me look bad. And because no other, is a persecution level type thing. And because I don't think anybody else has been charged like that under federal law for distributing the minors to an actual medical marijuana patient.
They had to make you look bad.
Yep. They did it to, so anyway.
So where are we at today? What's the Macintosh hearing represent for you? Can you tell us?
Well, actually, the only thing keeping me from 5 years in federal prison at this point is the appropriations rider, Section 531. No matter what anybody says, it's all illegal under federal law because THC greater than 3% is illegal under federal law. So every dispensary, Willie Nelson's operating at RICO levels, Jim Belushi, all those guys are operating continuing criminal enterprises. Hell, if they held Willie Nelson, if they held Willie Nelson to the same legal standard as they held me, that he would be doing 20 years for operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Hell, my little dispensary was just there in California. Willie Nelson and these other guys, they're selling recreational across the entire United States, and and actually the only thing protecting medical is this Section 5.3 appropriations rider that's keeping me from going to jail for 5 years. And it only protects medical. It doesn't protect recreational. So anybody operating a recreational dispensary is totally and completely in violation of federal law.
Okay, so that's the Rohrbach Amendment, and that's the Macintosh Act, I believe it is.
Right. So actually, they'll be violating my, my double jeopardy constitutional right in December, when they put me on state trial in federal court to determine if I was following state law, 15 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll be held accountable for the laws at that time, not for anything that kind of came after it, except for this, like the appropriations rider, they have to take that into account.
That's where the Macintosh Amendment or Act has to be heard. And that's what you're waiting till December of 21 to have?
Right, this December they're going to put me on state trial, the Macintosh hearing supposedly, and in that hearing they're going to try to determine if I was following state law. And the U.S. attorney, they've already indicated that they have some consultant who's going to opine that I wasn't following state law. So they're still after me, And actually the Section 531 argument got a number of cases dismissed. I can't remember everybody's name, but when that came along, the U.S. attorneys, they dismissed cases, and everybody's except for mine and the guys who are locked up in jail right now too. They have got. I'm in a bad spot, but Luke Scarmazzo and those guys doing 20 years. That's just unbelievable, especially how everybody else is,
But state law has
And when you're
expunged a lot of these sentences. And that's one of the things. And I have to bring up Senate Bill 519. It's due to be passed. It looks like it's got the votes, but that's the Hallucinogenic Act. So for medical purposes, we're going to have MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, probably missing one or two. But any of the hallucinogenics will be offered under medically supervised distribution. So the very same thing you found CCC doing, your cannabis club, would be what some other business will get involved with and create a situation where, just like what happened to you with medical cannabis, they'll be running afoul of federal law, as it's a controlled substance, all of these hallucinogenics, when they use them for any number of reasons that a doctor would prescribe them, PTSD and so on and so forth. So specifically, the feds got to say that you were violating state law. And to your knowledge, that's not the case. You are not violating state law.
Right. Yeah, they're basically attacking my business model, saying, that I wasn't a collective or a cooperative, sort of thing. And but like those things weren't even well defined. I was following the business models of the dispensaries I went and researched. That's kind of how everybody was doing it. At the time.
You were a sole proprietor.
Yes, or the when it came to filing the taxes, I was a sole proprietor, but I kind of ran the business model as a co-op where, where the growers and everybody was kind of had to be members and stuff like that.
So more like a collective.
A collective, yeah, I get those.
A collective is not statutory. It's not defined as an entity, whereas a co-op is. So were you actually collecting point of sales tax, for example, on your sales?
Actually, no, because it was medical. I didn't think we should be paying any taxes. And then I did, right before they raided me, I got a letter from the state saying that I should be collecting taxes on this dispensary sales. And
so that's really the problem.
After I got ready,
there you go. Nick caught that instantly. Nick, what do you see as that being a problem?
They weren't getting their cut. I mean, that's obviously what the case is, Yeah.
But
and
Charles was pretty high profile here in doing this. You were very high profile. What caused the notoriety that you ended up getting? What would you say contributed to that, Charles?
Well, actually, some people came along that were, that were kind of interested in my case. One, Cheryl Likely, she came along and became an activist on my, helping me fight. She said, actually, I think Cheryl, she set up all those interviews for me with Larry King and John Stossel. So she arranged all that for me. She's a real activist.
Why does it take publicity, shining a light on their negative, corrupt activity in order for us to get justice? That seems to be the case. You know what I'm saying? Is they have to be exposed for their crimes before they rush to some way to try to fix them. And I mean, even with what you're going through, are there any state representatives coming to your defense to, nip this in the bud?
Well, actually, I did have one state representative, Dana Rohrbacher, when he wrote his, Section 531 appropriations rider, when that passed through, he wrote an amicus brief for my case and asked that, said, Mr. Lynch they should end the case, basically,
Yeah.
But it didn't stop him, But other than that, I kind of feel California's left me behind to the dogs, the federal dogs. That while everybody else is building ill-begotten Schedule I empires, I'm stuck back here fighting for even though I've lost, I know that the Constitution doesn't apply, but, that's still the battle. It's got to apply, Otherwise, everybody is going to get in trouble. Not everybody's going to get in trouble. Only the elite and the well-off will survive this.
Well, speaking of that, did you have your own counsel, or were you forced to take on court-appointed counsel? What kind of defense?
Yeah, when they raided me, they took everything. I mean, I had my house and cars still, but I didn't have any money, and so I've got free federal public defenders. For 14, 15 years now.
Wow. How much of an expense is that for taxpayers? And how much would it be for any private representation? I mean, have they given you a ballpark of what they would charge you?
Well, actually, one of my original lawyers, he told me that just my appeal which took like a couple of years. He told me that would have cost a couple $1 million. So just let the federal public defenders do it, you know.
Are you kidding me? Do you see how much of a racket this is?
Well,
Actually, I have an estimate. I say that they spent over like $54 million over 15 years prosecuting me.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
they dragged the DEA, everybody got involved, the DEA, the DOJ, and then the appeals court, and then, you know, the Supreme Court. For 15 years, everybody's getting paid off my prosecutorial back, you know. So
15 years.
it's a lot.
Right.
I'd say 54 million, you know, but I don't even know how much it is.
But unless they make that,
Yeah, and the longer they draw it out, the more.
Well, my point is, the more they make that stick that you were in violation of state law, and even the jury said that you were in violation of federal law, the more obvious it is that this is a witch hunt, because they don't have any interest in enforcing state law. They did under the Cole memo. They said that if it was medical and you were in compliance with all state laws, that they had a prosecutorial discretion. They wouldn't charge you on federal matters that violate the Controlled Substance Act as long as you were within compliance with state law. So they had to make it look like you were in violation of state law. But none of the federal agencies had charged you with anything, or state agencies had charged you with anything, had they?
No. And then plus, you know, if the feds, I've been convicted in everything, you know, so if the feds give up on me, that going to have some implications, you know, down the road for people that are being incarcerated.
I would say, to their defense, the best thing they can do for you is dismiss this case, because I saw some of your amicus curiae briefs where they're arguing your Sixth Amendment rights, and jury and the nullifications, anti-nullification language that was used was language that was used inappropriately. And if that's the case, it is indeed a violation of your Sixth Amendment rights. And just for that reason alone, without getting into the weeds in terms of cannabis, and I mean that with all due respect, because this isn't your first dispensary you ran either. You had another one. Was it Atascadero?
Yeah, before I opened in Morro Bay, I had opened up in Atascadero.
And you never got busted there. You were doing things for the medically compassionate reasons that existed under Prop 215. Am I right?
Yeah, actually, I pushed the line a little bit there, you know, getting the dispensary open there in Atascadero. But when it finally came down to the final decision where they said, no, you're closing, you know, I closed. And then Morro Bay welcomed me with open arms and a ribbon cutting ceremony, you know, by the Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
Nice.
And so,
dude, can you believe this, Nick?
No, this is completely unbelievable, because that's the worst part, is the misconception that people have is of course, if they abide by the law and do everything by the book, that they don't have anything to worry about. And that's not the case, especially with Charles is a perfect example of that. You know, he
had
did everything accordingly to state law. What's that?
We had a rogue sheriff. Had it not been for that sheriff, would you be in the situation you find yourself in today, Charles?
Yeah, I think the sheriff, if he would have just let things be and followed his oath to his state constitution, that I wouldn't be in this predicament right now, I don't think.
Have you ever?
And that's why I said, with regards to state officials not coming to your defense, to me, the governor could easily make a call and, you know, nip it in the bud and kill the noise if he wanted to. But because he's also benefiting from Prop 64 and the commercialization of the cannabis industry here in the state, he's going to continue to let business as usual go on as long, you know, because
we've got,
like I was saying, Snoop Dogg. Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty sure you heard that, Charles, as a candidate, I'm pledging and to nullify Prop 64 and decriminalize the state of California on my first date of office. So hopefully that'll reverse what's going on with you and give everything a green light to be dismissed, you know?
Yeah, actually, I appreciate you taking this time to listen to my story and stuff, you know, because like I said, nobody from California at the state level has done that, you know, and I really appreciate that. And
Well, Nick, you know what the
the
biggest
pleasure
problem
is all mine.
and
man.
I'm endorsing you for governor at this point.
Oh, God bless. Good to know. Right here. Thank you.
Charles is one of your best advocates
Truly
because what's going
appreciate
on to Charles today potentially could happen to every licensee under 64. You're actually saving their own skin. They don't even know it. Charles, you never would have expected this. You thought you were doing everything. You've got ribbon cuttings, for crying out loud. You're as
Yeah, I've
public.
been, been a pretty decent guy most of my life. I'm a software developer. I graduated from the University of New Mexico with a bachelor's in computer science. I worked for 25 years writing software, and then I decided to open the dispensary, and
What appealed to you about
and
cannabis?
then I became a pretty bad guy.
Well, what appealed to you about it? Was it helping patients?
Yeah, actually, it was that. Plus, I was sick too. I get these really bad headaches and stuff, and so I was a patient, kind of learning about the industry too. And but like I said, what really got to me was, hey, I've just read this. It says, we the people of the state of California, based upon the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, hereby declare, medical marijuana. That's what got me. And then all the local politicians are like, oh no, we don't want that around here, and so it kind of upset me a little bit that everybody hated it so bad, and they were blocking it at every level. And so I kind of used my good reputation to a certain extent to kind of throw it in there as a, to fight the battle and get things moving, because things weren't moving too well, it seemed like back then.
Well, we weren't certainly as evolved. So I'm going to say this. You were actually arrested in 2007, right?
Pardon me?
The arrest came down in 2007, right?
Yeah, July 17th, 2007.
Okay. So at that time, I would say there was maybe a fraction of what we have in licensed dispensaries, recreational, that is under 64. So let's just say you had 1,000 dispensaries throughout the entire state of California.
Medical, right?
Yeah, only medical.
Right.
Recreational didn't exist. And then in November of 2016, you passed 64. Everybody's chasing the fact that you have to get taxable revenues off of cannabis. So all of a sudden, recreational allows you to do that. You're not a collective or a co-op anymore. You can be a C Corp. You can be for profit. And they're taking their piece of that. So now you have hundreds of thousands, let's say, of these cannabis entities. What does the Fed do about that today, Charles? Is that a problem for them based on what happened to you? You thought you were in compliance too.
Well, I mean, it's a problem for anybody if the feds decide they want to come after them, I mean, and I don't know. I don't want to discourage anybody, but, they can come do it to anybody, basically. As long as THC is Schedule 1, they can do it to anybody.
Yep. Well, and that should be a real warning to those out there that are investing their life savings into something like this, that even though you were, to your best of your knowledge, doing everything proper under Prop 215 guidelines at the time, the Fed managed to find reasons to go after you, even though it was medically legitimate as prescribed by the California law at the time. So now that 64 is passed, it gobbled up 215. There's really not a medical component. At the point of sale, you're still being taxed. The whole game has changed. Now the Fed
taxes
still
being taxed.
well, the Fed still and taxes. The Fed still applies IRS code 280E, which means you can't deduct normal business expenses. I mean, come on, what business doesn't get to deduct wages and rent and utilities?
Yeah, I don't even see how somebody could operate in a business under those.
You can't. That's my point.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like you were treated fairly under your Sixth Amendment rights? I've seen some of the arguments with that. Is that something that you feel should have been considered too, that you weren't treated fairly under the Sixth Amendment?
Which the Sixth Amendment?
Speedy trial, the right, well, the speedy trial one alone.
No,
right. Actually, that was
2 years.
Right. Yeah. To get my free federal public defenders, that was the first form I had to sign, was I give up my right to a speedy trial.
Okay.
So, I signed that away at the beginning, hoping that I having no idea, 15 years later, I'd be still battling it out,
So you still feel that there's some options.
And that's the worst part.
You're going to have to play some of these options. You're going to have to find out what the local government and the city attorneys at the time felt you were or were not doing, that were compliant with state and local law.
Yeah, actually, I think the attorneys even testified during my trial. I'd have to look it up, but I think he testified during my trial. And all he said, he didn't say much, but he said, yes, Mr. Lynch was following state law.
That's gold.
That was about it, you know.
But that's gold. So, Nickolas, you got your work cut out for you. Charles is one of the leading affected parties in this, and certainly longer than anybody else I know. The other people that have been involved and on the wrong side of these deals, most of those people are in jail and have gotten 20-year plus sentences. Charles Lynch shouldn't do one more day. Have you served any time, Charles?
Well, I got arrested. I was in jail for 4 days, and then they had a $400,000. I was released on a $400,000 bail, and then which was posted by my family. You know, they posted their houses for me. And so I was out on $400,000 bail, and then I was under house arrest for 9 months and 10 days, and then finally they lifted that off me, and I was drug tested for 5 years or longer. You know, every week I had to call in, and you know, if they said purple, I had to go down and take a drug test, and I have to report to the feds once a week. Even to this day, still I have to call in once a week to the feds, you know, and they can still come search my house at any moment. In fact, they have come to my house, and I was sitting there playing music, smoking a joint, and they wrote me up for it too, you know, in my own house, smoking a joint. There, you can check my my file, you know, that they wrote me up, you know, that they I had marijuana in my house. They thought my guitar cases were gun cases, and oh man,
what a nightmare!
Actually, if you want real trouble, have a gun and have some marijuana with you. You can really get in trouble because Schedule 1. You know, just go ask Weldon Angelos. He got 50 years for having a gun and selling a little bit of weed to an undercover FBI agent. Although he got pretty damn lucky. Somehow the prosecutor, I don't know who they know, but the prosecutors, they even almost apologized to the guy, you know, and they're having meetings to this day, even, you know, where the prosecutor's sitting there with Weldon Angelos and they're talking about things. But anyway, he got 50 years. And then to top all that he got out of the 50-year sentence, then he got a pardon from Donald Trump. You know, I don't know who Weldon knows, but he knows somebody. And
would a dismissal satisfy you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get, you know, I have 5 years hanging over me, you know.
But you signed to hold harmless when you got your conditional use permit for the city of Morro Bay. Okay, so you held them harmless for anything that would come from federal prosecution.
And I haven't. They've helped me, but I've never blamed them, said, "Hey, they wrote me," you know.
And that's very large-hearted of you, to be honest with you. But then again, it takes money to chase these kinds of things, and you did indeed sign that. So if nothing else, if they're an ally, maybe some kind of amicus brief or something, if their way of contributing to your defense is that you weren't doing anything that was contrary to state and local law, that should be a reason for the federal government to look at that today, in light of the fact that now we're recreational and we're taxing it and we're C Corps and everything else. I mean, Katie, bar the door. This train has left the station, and hallucinogenics is right around the corner. So, do they have enough prison cells in federal jails for all the Charles Lynches out there?
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah, I don't do the hallucinogenics anymore. You know, I did. College was my last time doing that.
More for us.
Well, there's a few ways that I would say I would remedy the situation. Of course, with the very least being getting your case dismissed by nullifying Prop 64 and decriminalizing the state, and pushing for any dismissal of cases such as yours, but also some recompense, for all that you lost. Like you said, you put all of your hard-earned money into getting your business started. You had it taken away from you. You not only lost that income that was taken away from you, but then your family had to take a hit financially as well to try to, provide some type of legal support for you. So I think it's best that, you be given some bit of, compensation for your pain and suffering. And with 15 years, you've been having 5 years in jail dangling over your head, just kind of kill
Well, that could be,
that
like he's saying, that could be state money for that. That's state money that he's talking about, because he can't really influence the federal DOJ actions here. But they had to paint you into a picture that you were violating state law, and it's my understanding you weren't. And if you have anything that can support the fact that you weren't violating state law, then everything else looks like a witch hunt. And a gracious governor could say, listen, we screwed up there. We didn't defend you when we should have. We should have came in and said, banging the table, that Charles Lynch was doing everything proper for the model that we anticipated, that we foresaw at the time back in 2007 that the Fed arrested him. And that rogue sheriff is the one that, for whatever his reasons were, and I'd be open to discuss with you what those reasons might have been, but was he doing things under the table? Was he trying to, force certain people to get licenses and not others? There's more to that story. Is that sheriff still even in office?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, he's not in office anymore. He retired.
Yeah.
So
we can't allow that, Nick. I mean, we can't allow a sheriff to run contrary to the voters' will.
Absolutely, which is why my goal, first and foremost, as a representative, is to make sure that every state official, every sworn representative, is upholding their constitutional oath. And it starts first with that sheriff's department. Like he said, is if the sheriff had pretty much upheld his oath of office, then he wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. Right. And if there had have been any out-of-state interference from the department or, federal agents, then it's up to the sheriff's department to get involved and stop them from doing so. So, yeah, it's a failure on our law enforcement across the board. Starting first with the commander-in-chief of the state, Governor Gavin Newsom or Jerry Brown or whoever, the governor
actually
was
Arnold,
and is now.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor, I think, when I was rated.
A Republican.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. We even wrote him and everything, but we didn't even, didn't get a response back from the Arnold.
They don't care about us, man. They use this platform. Yeah. They occupy a public position, which is, this what we think would be a noble thing for someone in a community to do is serve as a representative. They could care less about that, man. They use it as a way to influence their power, like Newsom is doing by pushing Prop 64, Kamala Harris, and taking it to the federal level with the MORE Act. So they're attempting to do what they did to you and what they've done to many others on a wider scale. And the common person, or commoner, isn't really seeing that or making that connection, which is why I greatly thank you for being here to speak with me about this today, is because, I'm doing my best to build my platform as a candidate and bring awareness to these issues, whether I get elected or not, to, again, raise awareness. But that's what first needs to happen, is if we're unaware that this is even happening, and then we're steadily being taxed for it, and it's being wastefully spent on 15 years of, prosecution, unconstitutional prosecution, then we need to be making a stand against that.
The stand is so important because with SB 519, now you have medically prescribed hallucinogenics. You're going to have to go back to a collective model for that to work. Precisely what Charles was describing back in 2006, but his entity was a sole prop until such time that local government or state government told him he had to tax. So they created 64 to make it legal to tax cannabis, which under federal law and IRS 280E, as a collective, you don't run into those obstacles because you're a nonprofit and you're not charging tax. So I don't think without the right governor in place, that SB 519 represents smooth sailing once that becomes law either. These licensed recreational dispensaries aren't going to be in a position to distribute hallucinogenics. How are we going to get them? We're going to go back exactly what Charles Lynch was, what's under CCC.
Yeah, and with possibilities like Kevin Faulkner, your former
Oh,
mayor out there in San
I'll
Diego,
say nothing bad. I'll say nothing rather than something bad.
him, John Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, they would be same old, and they
You got
wouldn't do
100
anything
candidates
about.
running for the seat. 100 candidates. How many
Wow,
candidates?
100.
Something like that, isn't it?
I think it's tipping up there. I know it's over 60 so far, but when it
Yeah.
comes to the top 10, I would definitely fall under that category. So I'm doing my best to rise to the top of the crop, but of course, the mainstream media isn't going to talk about my campaign unless I have millions of dollars in campaign funding or, high profile people endorsing my campaign. So if I get the people of California behind me, then that's all that matters, because people are what win elections, not money.
Well, one of the things that I've loved about you is not only your position to reintroduce constitutionality with medical cannabis laws, but our drought and what we got to do. It's time we took our heads out of the sand and realized that this isn't getting better anytime soon. And you've got active plans to address drought conditions for all the people in the state of California, where our food comes from, what we need every day to bathe, to drink. Where's that water going to come from unless we take our heads out of the sand and start acting on that right now? So you should have a platform exposed to many of the essential bullet points that you raise in your campaign.
Yeah. You think, man, a lot of people should be thinking like survivalists after this pandemic panic, and basically having the rug pulled out from underneath them. And it's like, you want to make sure your bases are covered, that you're able to have access to reliable food, water, shelter, energy. Right now, we don't have that security. Yeah.
No. And instead, when you do a debate, they lowball you. They bring in your family. I heard that the other day. I mean, what are these people doing? I don't take them seriously if they can't debate the subject matter and reintroduce situations like Mr. Lynch had to go through and continues to go through. And that's a failure of our the executive branches at first, but then our judiciary too.
Yeah. I mean, what he's dealing with affects me also, because I actually was on trial this year for videotaping in court, and they were going to sentence me to 6 years for contempt of court. Okay. Can you believe that? For just videotaping in court? And,
how'd that shake out?
What's that?
How'd that shake out?
Well, I did get sentenced, and I was sentenced to community service, and had to pay about a $600 fine, etc. But the same thing that what happened with Mr. Lynch here happened with me. Was I brought up constitutionality, saying, hey, I have the right to freedom of press here, and as a member of the public, I want to be able to hold our public officials accountable. And under state law, we even have the right to record public officials in the public place. So a court is no different than city hall or park or any of that. But for some reason, again, the judge and the prosecutor felt as if this court rule, it's a court rule, not a state law, not even the constitutional law. Court rule was more superior than those two. So
did you ever think of appealing it? Have either one of you thought of appealing your cases?
Oh, I'm appealing mine for sure. What about you, Charles? I don't want to be in a 15-year situation like Charles here,
No, not recommended.
It's ridiculous.
Are you going to appeal, Charles?
Me? Appeal?
Yeah. You read the jury trial.
Oh, actually, I already lost my appeal.
I didn't know that. Okay.
To the Ninth Circuit, and then from the Ninth Circuit, we appealed to the Supreme Court. They didn't hear the case, so the Ninth Circuit.
Wow.
Actually, so there was 3 judges in my Ninth Circuit, and one of them actually said I didn't get a fair trial, and the other 2 said no. Actually, Lynch, he should actually, instead of 1 year, Mr. Lynch should get 5 years, is what they decided. So even though the judge sentenced me to 1 year on the minor thing, he said there's no escape from that. But then on appeal, then they upped the ante. Now I got 5 years.
So you're back to 5 years.
Yep, 5 years. So only that appropriations rider saving my ass right now.
Which is due to be heard. McIntosh hearing is in December of 21.
Right. And
And
just one note on
they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. You know what I mean?
Yep. I kind of feel like that, And the one thing about the MORE Act, there are some things of the MORE Act that I'm in favor of. Like for one, it deschedulizes THC, and that's the key to this whole thing. As long as marijuana is Schedule 1, then they can do whatever they want. So the MORE Act would actually deschedulize THC. It would expunge records. Actually, it's even questionable whether the MORE Act would expunge my record because there's some language in there about minors. And then there's the reparations part. I don't expect no reparations from nobody, for what I've been through. But I would like to have my, the truth to be told and to have my felonious record expunged and to have THC, descheduled. That's the important part,
Right. Well, restitution is definitely in order.
How old are you today, Charles?
I'm 59. They've been prosecuting me. I've almost 25% of my life I've been under federal prosecution.
God.
So if you have to walk into a federal prison and give up another 5 years, that's basically a death sentence.
Well, I'm not like one of these billionaires that'll kill myself in prison. I'll tough it out, and but yeah, it's already taken, like I said, lots of my life away. And
well, if I can have anything to do with it, I will definitely stop it because
right on. Thank you, Nickolas. You're a real true politician.
What I'm going to propose is that when SB 519 is passed, Charles Lynch gets the license to run our collective for hallucinogenics.
All right.
Yeah, actually,
in the middle. We'll be serving you psilocybin.
Right. Actually, that's one thing I'm a little disappointed at, is I've been disenfranchised and nobody had hired me, and I've been living in disenfranchised poverty for quite some time. I got lucky and sold a domain name. Canacare and Pharmacan, I sold those, which kind of kept me going through the years, and but I don't know, I lost my train of thought there.
It's hard. I mean, the money's just not rolling in, and the thing is that you have expenses nonetheless. So the court-appointed counsel, have they been competent? What's your opinion? I mean, based on the amount of time they can spend on your case, they've got other cases too.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like there's not much they can do other than just wait it out. It seems like, because they can't really get too aggressive. And
so are the deal days gone? I mean, you have nothing to barter with?
Yeah, there's no deal on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but you do still have.
It's like Billie Holiday,
He still has
come in on your deathbed and slap cuffs on you.
Yeah.
There is the court of public opinion too. Yeah. There's the court of public opinion, and there's a governor that could be in that office that argues vociferously, you were wronged, Charles.
Exactly.
That's the problem. You were wronged. And it's going to take a governor like Nickolas Wildstar to say enough of this bullshit. It defies race. It defies gender. It defies sexuality. It is about our constitutional rights for due process and liberty and freedom.
Yeah. Okay? State officials needs to stand up. I mean, they're operating in felonious violation of federal law too.
They get a 10th Amendment waive. You don't.
No. There's the only thing they just haven't gotten prosecuted in a federal trial. They would get no waivers or nothing.
Well, they would get the 10th Amendment argument, and that would survive.
No. The Rage versus Gonzalez overrules that, doesn't it?
I'd have to review it again, so don't hold me to that.
All right.
But we disagree on very few things. The MORE Act is one. And the other one I think is the 10th Amendment rights that I believe, because I know when you signed your cup, and this is on his wiki page, Nick, go on there and you can see the application that he signed. And the one thing they do, paragraph 7, is hold themselves harmless from any kind of charges that might come from federal prosecution. You can't hold the city of Morro Bay harmed, that is, or any of the attorneys or the people that work there. So they're all held harmless. And you still went into it knowing that, Charles. You still signed up and got that license, even knowing that. So at the end of the day, they're going to assert a 10th Amendment argument to the Fed. and I think I read where they did, but they should at least be there to defend you and say you did everything by the book and the rules that were in place by them at the time he was arrested. And that day still has to come. We still
right. Actually, the city of Morro Bay, the attorney and the mayor did come to my trial, although they couldn't say much. Like I said, now that I remember, the mayor was there also, and she went on the stand and said Mr. Lynch was following state law, basically. That's all she could say.
But so that's plenty. That's plenty. That's plenty. So let's get Nickolas in office. I know it's a wild and woolly process, but it's only 1 year. Nick, is that right? You get 1 year on the recall seat? It's a special election. Did we lose you? Well, you do. You get 1 year.
Yep, I get 1 year in office, and then
you'll have the opportunity to fill.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I was just gonna correct me if I'm wrong. It's 1 year you get in office on the special election, right? He must be having a wonky signal.
Yeah.
But that's the key. Can you get somebody like Nickolas in office and come and bang on the table and say, these inconsistencies with federal law are costing, our constituents, Charles Lynch, 25% of their life, and in all fairness, we don't have a legitimate control, tax, and regulate framework that we can apply if subjective prosecution from the Fed puts a Charles Lynch in prison for 5 years. Those are the arguments we're going to make in cannabis, medical cannabis, and hallucinogenics. And I think it's a guy like Nickolas Wildstar that can help us get there.
Yeah, Nickolas. Yeah, actually, the one thing about my case is so I didn't take the 1 year deal, but another defendant who was arrested pretty much the same day I was, he took the 1 year deal, did his time. And now he's got 3 or 4 dispensaries in California.
Hindsight's 20/20. But you stood for the right reasons, and you didn't believe you did anything wrong. So you shouldn't be penalized for that. And the federal case is dragging 14 years. Listen, I want to tell you, I respect you. I can't believe what you've gone through, and your stick-to-itiveness is just amazing to see that. It's inspiring. And I hope that, Nick, I don't know if you're with us or not, but man, I sure hope that you can get into office and do Charles Lynch some good.
Yeah, I can't hear from Nick anymore.
I think we lost him. So I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. We've got an hour into this, and Charles, keep us up to date with what's going on. Help us get Nickolas Wildstar in office, and let's come back to this thing and have some good news when it's available. Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys bringing me on this. I appreciate Nickolas taking the time, and I really appreciate it.
We do too. So, there's a lot of people out there pulling for you, and this the final chapter is yet to be written. Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right. Have a great day. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.